start by introducing, just tell me your name.
Benjamin Aziza.
And how old are you, Benjamin?
I'm 21 years old.
Okay. And Michelle.
I'm Michelle Aziza, and I'm 53 years old.
Okay, well, you don't have to give me your age. He's the one we want to get, okay? And you don't have to give me your age, do you?
Okay. Danita Dubinsky Aziza.
Okay. And I should just explain, I'm in the home of the Aziza family, who have returned to Canada after having been in Israel for 4.5 years. And like many other Winnipeggers, have a lot of ties to Israel, and especially in Benji's case. Now, Benji, you were telling me about your experience. Just let's do it live for the camera. You were recently serving as a medic.
Yeah, so before the Army, I joined Magen David Adom, which is Israel's ambulance service. I was a medic there for 8 months. I served on an ICU ambulance in Netanya. And then from there, I was drafted into the medical corps of the Army, where I trained as a combat medic. I served as a medic in Jenin for 2 months, and then I returned to be a medic instructor for the remainder of my service. I was part of Operation Pillar of Defense in November of 2012, and right before I was discharged, I was sent to a field hospital in the Golan Heights where we treated Syrian refugees from the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. So you did see service in Gaza then?
Yeah, I did not personally go into Gaza because there was no ground operation in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
but I was part of a mass operation to train 15,000 combat soldiers in first aid before a ground operation, which didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. And your present status is that if you were to return to Israel now, you could be subjected to call-up, is that right?
Potentially. I'm in constant contact with my current commander. I told him to let me know if I do get called up, and then I have to make a decision whether I go back. Because I'm in Canada right now, I don't have to go back, but I would strongly think about it.
Well, this is one of the points that I've been talking about with other people. Israelis who are in reserve, do they get a call from Canada to return?
It depends on your unit, but I'm not 100% sure if everybody would have to go back. Mm-hmm. Some Israelis who are on vacation, I think, have to go back, mm-hmm. But I'm not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. But I know that in my case, I'm not obligated to go back just for my reserve service.
And you were saying you do have, obviously, a lot of buddies who are serving right now.
Yeah, so I have a couple of fellow lone soldiers, actually, mm-hmm. Who are serving in Golani, paratroopers, a couple of medics also who are in Gaza right now.
What nationality were they?
Mostly Americans, mm-hmm. But they're, lone soldiers. It's really remarkable about lone soldiers is that I made friends from pretty much every continent in the world. Like, I have friends from Africa, from Europe, from Asia. Like, it's really, you get to meet a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to switch to your mother, because Danita, you were telling me the names of a couple of women in this case who were called up, who are Winnipeggers by origin, right?
Right. So Emily Rose, who served, she's been out of the Army now, I believe, for 2 years, I would say, was called up on Miluim. She's serving in some sort of high security position, so I'm not exactly sure what it is, but she was called up and she's been serving now for almost 3 weeks. Bailey Schuster is a volunteer with Machal right now, and she's been working in Sorel unit, where volunteers from all over the world come and spend 2 weeks at a time volunteering for the IDF. And she right now is in the north of the country with a group of, I believe, 20-year-olds from France. So we have 2 women. We're very proud of them. We're proud of all of our kids, especially, we're proud of each and every soldier, but especially proud in Winnipeg that we've had so many kids who have served in the IDF. Zev Feintuck was a volunteer for 18 months mm-hmm. while we were living in Israel. Daniel Schachter was a lone soldier that we adopted and lived with us throughout his service for 3 years. He served in paratroopers. To my knowledge, he hasn't been called up yet, but he's living currently in Tel Aviv. And that's just offhand. So we're
Really too, so you served.
No, I didn't know.
You
I'm
didn't,
a
sir?
Moroccan-born
Oh.
French citizen who
Oh.
immigrated to Canada 30-some years ago
Oh, so so when you went to Israel, it was strictly as a visitor?
as a visitor, and we
Oh.
became residents, but never.
Oh.
The only Israeli in the family, in this family, we have a lot of relatives in Israel.
Yeah.
The only Israeli in this room is Benji.
Uh-huh. And you made Aliyah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
the age of 17.
Mhm.
I decided-
Right after high school.
Well, I was in high school actually.
You were in high school.
Most of my friends from high school were
And you're 22 now?
turning 22.
Okay, so it's quite recent.
Yeah. So most of my friends from high school are not in Israel. Were not Jewish or Israeli. So
Mhm.
they were all planning on going to college and stuff in
Mhm.
the U.S. And I had to make my decision, and ultimately I did. One morning I woke up and I said, "Let's go to the Ministry of Interior and sign the papers," and that's exactly what I did.
Uh-huh. So tell about your experience as a lone soldier. This is the term we're seeing so often. I was actually in Beit HaChayal. Okay, so you were a lone soldier. Where was your adoptive family?
So my I actually had a few adopted families
Mhm.
because my dad's first cousins live in Jerusalem. So
Mhm.
that was immediately, when my parents told me that they were leaving, I said, okay, I'll be, with them one weekend. And then I also, I ended up finding an apartment in Tel Aviv. And then ultimately a friend of mine from the base asked me one weekend if I would come to his house for Shabbat. And I ended up going. I really liked his family. It was in Ramat Toshavim, which is just next to Kfar Saba.
Mhm.
And I really fell in love with his family, and they were really, really welcoming to me. So I ended up going there pretty much every weekend during the last 8 months of my service. But the term lone soldier in the Army is taken very differently from what it is here. The Army itself does not like to use the term lone soldier because of the fact that there are so many willing people in Israel to give a spot in their home for these soldiers. So they are lone soldiers, but they always have a family to go to.
Mm-hmm. So you had 3 different families then? Or,
I
or numerous.
can't even remember
yeah.
how many friends of mine from my base I went to for a Shabbat. Really remarkable how everybody took an initiative, especially during the holidays, the high holidays. I had 15 invitations to different homes. Everybody wanted, a piece of a Canadian that, can go and, tell their family why they moved to Israel, why they decided to join the IDF.
I think because we know of the 2 Americans who've been killed, and I don't know if it's unusual. I suppose when, there are 32 casualties at this point,
Yeah.
to have 2 Americans, I don't know if that's unusual or not, because I don't know what the situation was like in other wars.
Well, the most famous lone soldier, who the Lone Soldier Center is named after, is Michael Levine, who was a soldier, a lone soldier from the States, who was on vacation during his service in the States when the Second Lebanese War broke out. Immediately he got back on a plane, went back to Israel, and was sent in directly to Lebanon, and he was killed in action during that war. And he is, to my knowledge, before this operation, the last lone soldier to have been killed in action. But I'm actually not sure how many in total have.
But I think that many lone soldiers who choose to go serve as a soldier or as volunteers decide to do so in combat units, and that may be why there's a higher,
Really?
there's a good percentage. These are kids
Yeah.
who want to serve, and they're not wanting to serve in an office job. They're wanting to serve the country by defending it. So, paratroopers. Daniel Chateau was a paratrooper. Even Zev was in combat.
Yeah, if you look at other websites, for instance, I'll look at Al Jazeera, and they have some comments about the idea of expatriates from other countries serving in the Israeli army You know, do Canadians, how would they regard that? Do they consider that treasonous? And I never thought of it that way.
You know, it's an interesting point that I think it probably is a unique situation where you have non-Israeli citizens, you know, going and serving for the state of Israel. It's probably nowhere else in the world, a country is at war, do people from foreign countries come and serve. So as far as our experience with Canadians, knowing that our son was serving, and we know from friends, friends of ours, Bailey Schuster, serving in the Army today, there's actually a lot of respect for and understanding, a lot of respect for the fact that these kids are taking the initiative and taking risks. It's a lot of unknown. When you go to Israel, you join the army, and yet they're doing it. So from our experience, from Jewish and non-Jewish friends, it's been very, very positive.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you read, there was an article in the National Post. I think they said there are 125 Canadians serving in the Israeli. I'm not sure how many of them are active right now. I guess it would depend on whether their unit was called up, but it was quite a high number. So Benji, just off the cuff, if you were called up tomorrow,
Yeah.
how do you think you'd react?
I had a plan with my dad, and I wasn't going to make any impulsive decisions. I would have to first of all sleep on it, because it's obviously a pretty big decision to drop everything and hop on a plane and not have a return date. But I've been in that situation before, and ultimately I believe that I would go. This late in an operation would obviously raise some concern about the intent of bringing me in, but I would strongly consider going.
Danita, how would you feel about it if he were called up and he went?
That's a hard question, because after living in Israel and, the decision that Benji made to go to the army and to make Aliyah, I have to say was made over a very long period of time. It's a pretty big deal when a 17-year-old has to decide and make that kind of decision. And I think, we have this sort of image of what it is to be an IDF soldier. And when you sit back and you think of all the glamour and, you're a soldier and people dream of being a soldier, when you actually have to do it, it's not so glamorous. It's a very, very big commitment. Not only do you put your life on the line in many cases, but it's a tough 2 years. Some kids serve for 18 months as volunteers, 2.5 years, 3 years. It's a huge chunk of time out of your life, and it's not easy to serve, day in, day out. Kids aren't doing glamorous things. They're standing guard, doing guard duty for 8 hours a time, walking back and forth. They do a lot of very monotonous, sometimes very not exciting work. And so to make that decision, when Benji made that decision, I think at the time, Michelle and I knew what that entailed. And when he finally made the decision, which he made on his own, obviously with our input, I think both Michelle and I knew what that entailed and had to accept that. And as being Zionists and making the decision to move our family to Israel and to live there for 4 years, I always said that, when you're there, you are like everyone else. We're not quite like everyone else because, we didn't grow up there. Our kids didn't grow up there. We weren't fully integrated in the culture, but I think, once you make that decision, then you have to accept the whole package. And, nobody, I don't believe there is a parent in Israel that, doesn't fear for their child and doesn't fear for them being in the army, but they know that that's unfortunately what it means. And so, I would never sit and say, Benji, you shouldn't go because I'm scared. Every mother in the country is very scared right now. Every father's very scared right now. But,
Well, of course, we're seeing in the lists of casualties, we're also seeing ages of officers who are into their mid-40s.
yeah,
So we're not just talking about sons and daughters online. We're talking about fathers also. It's just, I think it's sort of emblematic of the Israeli army that the people who put their lives on the line come from all facets, all walks. It's a little different than any other army in the world. You wouldn't see a 45-year-old officer in combat in any other army, I doubt. They'd be either sitting at a desk or somewhere behind the lines. Here, they're...
Yeah,
And I think
you
that-
read stories today about soldiers who went in, injured, came back into Israel for treatment, and couldn't wait to get back into.
Well, there
Gaza.
was a terrific clip I saw it on the Times of Israel website about,
Right.
it was the general, he was also a bald guy, his face was all
Right.
scratched up, yeah, and he went right back into
Yeah,
combat.
We have many relatives all over Israel with children who are in the army today, either in the army today, or have been called up. And when we were there 2 weeks ago, as this was starting to happen, many of these kids were, I don't want to say looking forward to being called up, but they were anxious about being called up because they felt a need to serve. And it's
And I think,
hard to
you know,
explain.
Michelle, you should tell Bernie the story of your relatives who are living in Ashdod, and their son, who you spoke, or in Ashkelon, who you spoke to this week, because I think it's really telling what he said to you.
Two first cousins who are in their 50s now, are deaf, have lived in Ashkelon their whole life. And their family, they have several children and grandchildren, but they're deaf. And so the whole experience of sirens is a very, very difficult situation for them, obviously. They're carrying pagers wherever they go at night. A page means...
Who is deaf, your cousins or their children?
My cousins.
Okay, your cousins,
First cousins.
yeah.
They have children who are not. Children who are not served in the army. But my first cousins are deaf and have since now 2001, I think, for over 10 years anyway, have been on the receiving end, on and off, but on the receiving end of these rockets. So very, very difficult situation. Their sons, they have two sons and a daughter. The two sons are married with children. And all that they're anxious to, very anxious to serve. To them, the situation is unbearable. They have parents who are literally, throughout the day, every day, rushing back and forth to the stairwell. In their case, they live in a small apartment building in Ashkelon. There is no shelter. Their shelter is the stairwell. And so throughout a 24-hour period, they are back and forth to that stairwell. Very difficult situation for their kids to accept.
Can they hear the siren? They have an alert.
The city of Ashkelon, and I'm sure this happens all over Israel, issues pagers to hearing impaired people in Israel. And so one page means a siren has gone off, rocket is heading towards Ashkelon, and then the second page is sent when it's safe to return. So when we lived in Israel, actually, in 2009, there were rockets flying. They came to us. We were living in the north. They came and stayed with us for a few days. And as difficult as it was for them to communicate, they were trying to explain to us what it was like. It was just horrible, horrible feeling to have to live through it. On top of the fact that in their situation they're deaf, very, very difficult situation. So their kids are very anxious to be called up and serve. For them, there's a personal connection that their parents are going through this hell, and as many people in Israel are, and in Gaza and Palestinian side. But for them personally, they feel not just an obligation.
Sorry to interject, but your cousin is married to somebody who's deaf today because he was injured in a terrorist attack in a kindergarten.
When he was a kid, yeah.
When he was a kid.
Yeah.
So, it's for people who are living there right now. It's we're in touch with people all the time, every day, as I'm sure everybody is who has family or friends there, and it's hard to describe the feeling of when you're here and you know what they're going on there, and that you carry on with your daily life here, or you try to, when you know what their daily life is like. And
But By and large, I think that they're very, very strong people, friends, relatives, very appreciative of whatever little things that people outside of Israel do. You know, we tell them that, you know, we went to a rally, 150 people showed up on Monday night, and they're so appreciative, Israelis, so thankful. To
Yeah,
us. It's-
I actually, the rally in Monday afternoon that was at Union Station, and I had been speaking to the young guy who was organizing it. He did a terrific job, and I encouraged him to have it end up at the Human Rights Museum. I actually told him to have it there. He brought about 100 people, and I posted it to Facebook, and I was getting reaction from Israelis. Actually, I think a lot of them must have been former Winnipeggers who had heard about the rally, and they saw it on Facebook, and they saw the clips, and they said, "Wow, this is Winnipeg, and you had 2 rallies." So it's tremendous for morale, I think. Just on that point, Michelle, now, I know that you had been trying to do something in the way of organizing a group, or you had given the idea, and since that actually seems to be temporarily shelved, what would you like to see done? Do you think that Winnipeggers or any Canadians or anyone should make the effort to go there as soon as possible?
Well, I think several things. You know, social media is not something that I was very good at, but I'm learning on the go here, and then all of us should be very active on social media. Currently, the Federation, Jewish Federation in Winnipeg, has an emergency relief fund that they're fundraising for. So, and there are a lot of very good things that they're fundraising for. So hopefully, many people in Winnipeg will donate and donate generously. And I think, but you know, we weren't successful in organizing this mission. It was on very, very, very short notice. But we're working on a mission, you know, hopefully later in August, maybe in September, give people more time and go to Israel and show Israelis that as Canadians, we are 100% supportive of the state of Israel and the people of Israel. And so our intent was, and hopefully will be, that we will go and demonstrate in front of the Canadian Embassy and show our support for the Canadian government in the sense that they have taken, go to the Knesset, go and visit families, unfortunately, of fallen soldiers, and show our respect. Go to bomb shelters where kids are in day camp today. All of those things that we know that Israelis appreciate greatly anything that we as Jews outside of Israel can do for them. And I think it'd be tremendous if we were able to get a group, no matter what size, to go to Israel and show that support. So I think there's lots that can be done, and there is a lot that is being done today.
Mm-hmm. So just in wrapping up then, Benji, what would you say if you were, I suppose you've been in contact with a lot of your buddies in the Army.
Yeah.
How is it generally through Facebook, or what's your means of communication?
Through WhatsApp, which is basically text messages.
Yeah.
I haven't been in touch with any of my friends who are in Gaza because their phones are taken away.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm in touch with my commander and all my friends who are also waiting to be called up. The situation, like, you can tell just by watching or reading the news, like, it's not an easy situation, and certainly not easy to explain from here. What we as a family are going through, being here and not being there, and knowing what everybody, all of our friends and family are going through, it's not easy to explain. But hopefully it will get resolved soon.
Yeah, and so if this clip, and I'll be writing about this too, if this is seen by any Israelis, we just want them to know that we're all with them and we're thinking about them every moment of our waking days.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thanks.